Hi, my name is Dylan Schmotzer, and today I will be analyzing the Joe Shuster Story, the artist behind Superman. This graphic novel caught my attention because I'm a big fan of behind-the-scenes stories. We often see the finished product, but we rarely see all the hard work and effort that goes into making it. So, without further ado, let's jump right in. As previously stated, the title of this graphic novel is The Joe Shuster Story, the artist behind Superman. It was written by Julian Velage and illustrated by Thomas Campy. It was published by Super Genius on May 15, 2018, and has a total of 184 pages. This is a true graphic novel, as it follows the same story from beginning to end. The first act ends on page 11 when Joe starts to tell his story to the police officer. The second act ends on page 155 as Joe finishes his recollection, and the final act ends on page 165 with Joe's new outlook on life. It doesn't fit our model, but the story still works. How Joe got to his current place in life is very important to understand how far he fell from grace, so his backstory needed as much time dedicated to it as possible. At its core, this is Joe Shuster's story. Though Jerry Siegel is in the majority of this story as well, the events of the plot are primarily told from Joe's perspective. Joe's goal in the story is to make both his and Jerry's dreams for Superman, their co-creation, a reality. However, the money-hungry executives hold the rights to Superman hostage and use the character for their own gain. The conflict in Act 2 supports this goal, as most of the story revolves around Joe and Jerry trying to regain control of their creation. There's a strong story arc in this graphic novel. We see how the idea of two young men becomes warped into a tool for greed and unfair treatment. Funny enough, their creation stood for truth, justice, and the American way. The beginning, middle, and end of the story are also clear. The beginning follows Joe as he is taken to a diner by a policeman. The middle shows the reader how he got to that point in his life, and the end focuses on Joe's life after his encounter with the officer. In my opinion, the story has a satisfying conclusion. Though it doesn't undo the years of injustice done unto them, the co-creators are finally compensated somewhat fairly for their work. Unsurprisingly, Joe Shuster has the strongest character arc in the story. We see him grow from an optimistic boy into a defeated man with a more realistic outlook on the world. Jerry also has a character arc, but he doesn't change as much as Joe. Jerry goes from a somewhat egotistical boy to a bitter old man. Throughout the novel, Jerry always thinks he's better than others and has a difficult time working as a team. The transitions in this story are effective. Even if we don't know exactly when the events of the plot are taking place, the illustrations provide context clues for the approximate setting. The illustrations are also drawn in different ways to indicate their position in the story. For example, past events are drawn without solid outlines. The primary transitions in this novel are action to action, subject to subject, and aspect to aspect. Of these three, I would say the action to action transition is the most commonly used. The novel makes use of the page as a mini-comic idea quite well. Each page feels like it's a complete story, and all of the pages come together to form a coherent narrative. Between the art style and the placement of text on the page, the story has great directional flow. Each panel guides the reader to the next segment of the page and makes the story easy to follow. I was never confused by a misplaced speech bubble or a seemingly out-of-place illustration. I would recommend this graphic novel to my classmates. It's an interesting read that offers a unique origin story to one of the most iconic characters in all of fiction. However, I wouldn't recommend this to most of my friends. Anyone who's not overly interested in comics or historical events in the entertainment industry isn't likely to get much enjoyment from this. I found it interesting that the novel used Joe's artwork for other projects while they talked about them. Usually these projects were short-lived, so the audience is shown the illustrations while reading about why it's only mentioned briefly. Here's a fun fact about the graphic novel. In an interview with CBR, Julian Volage stated that the focus on Joe Shuster was mostly by coincidence. He got a hold of a box of letters written by Shuster himself from 1965 to 1970. At this point in his life, Shuster was struggling to pay his medical bills and feared he would have been evicted from his home. Volage was so moved by these letters that he decided to make Joe the narrator. Thank you for watching my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it and have a great day.